No live broadcast. No lap-by-lap breakdown. Just silence-controlled photos and a testing day that felt more like a cover-up than a shakedown. But behind that silence, something happened. Red Bull went faster than expected. Mercedes quietly logged 56 laps. And 4 major teams, including Ferrari and McLaren, didn't show up at all. F1 called it a simple systems check. But what actually happened on day 1 was far more complicated, and what no one showed you might be exactly what decides who leads and who's already behind. Day 1 of 2026 wasn't meant to tell us anything. At least, that's what the FIA would like you to believe. Officially, it was just a shakedown, a basic systems check, not a real test. No lap times, no comparisons, no media access. But the moment cars hit the track, it became clear. This wasn't a warm-up. There was no live stream, no GPS feed, no timing screen for fans to follow. Each team was allowed just 12 photos for public release, carefully selected, perfectly staged, stripped of all context. This wasn't just secrecy, it was narrative control. And yet, for all the effort to keep things quiet, something slipped out anyway. F1 insisted this wasn't about performance, but when nearly half the grid stays in the garage, and the other half starts revealing speed, people start asking questions. So yes, the test was designed to hide, but it may have revealed something even more important. Who's actually ready, and who isn't? A 1 minute and 18.835 seconds from Isaac Hadjar. That's the number that broke through the noise. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. Cold conditions, dusty tarmac, a rookie driver in a brand new car with no official timing. And yet, it's the number everyone keeps talking about, because it wasn't just fast, it was comfortable. The car looked planted, balanced. There was no visible correction, no hesitation, no oversteer snap mid-corner. Hadjar didn't just complete laps, he attacked them. And here's the thing, Red Bull didn't need to push. They could have logged data quietly. They could have run high fuel or reduced engine modes, just like everyone else. But they didn't. They let a rookie put in a time that turned heads. Not by accident, but by design. That's where this gets interesting, because that lap, however unofficial, has already shifted expectations. Other teams can claim they weren't going for performance. They can say they're not worried about day 1 times. But you can't unsee a car that fast. Especially not when your own car didn't even leave the garage. Behind closed doors, that lap becomes a benchmark. Engineers start reverse calculating fuel loads. Aerodynamicists study the images frame by frame. Team principals ask the same question. Is Red Bull really that far ahead, or are they bluffing? And in a regulation reset, that uncertainty is deadly, because it forces teams into one of 2 traps. Either you panic, or you overcorrect. So yes, the time wasn't meant to matter, but it does, because now the paddock has to respond to something it wasn't ready to see. For teams didn't run a single lap, not one installation check, not even a systems rollout. And on a day where visibility was already minimal, that absence felt louder than anything that happened on track. Ferrari was the biggest name missing. After months of controlled leaks, aggressive design talk, and promises of early readiness, they didn't appear. No track presence, no behind-the-scenes footage, no official statement explaining the absence. According to internal whispers, the car is built, but not yet stable. The new hybrid cooling system is rumored to be extremely sensitive to airflow variation, and Ferrari may not be confident it would survive long enough to complete even a short run. And when the only other car setting times is a Red Bull that looks finished, that kind of silence turns into pressure. McLaren's absence was different and maybe more deliberate. They ended 2025 strong. They have one of the most refined chassis philosophies heading into this season. But instead of capitalizing on momentum, they went dark. No photos, no press, no explanation. Which raises the question, is this confidence or concern? Aston Martin also stayed in the garage. Not unusual for a team that often plays its cards close early in testing. But this year, they were expected to push. The rumors suggested early validation of their aero concept. So why the delay? Some reports point to unresolved issues with battery cooling under partial lift scenarios, which in the 2026 spec can cause significant instability. And then there's Williams. They were supposed to be the underdog that ran early, taking every opportunity to bank mileage and data before the big names show up. Instead, they stayed silent. And when a team like Williams doesn't show on day 1, it usually means something basic went wrong, something that should have been ready weeks ago. So whether it was caution or something worse, these four teams are now chasing shadows. Because while Red Bull and Mercedes were collecting real-world data, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston, and Williams were still inside, watching. And in Formula One, every day you're not running, you're already behind. In a reset this big, you'd expect the FIA to take control early, to outline the limits, to set expectations, to show that no one would be allowed to exploit ambiguity. But on day one, the FIA said almost nothing. There was no press release about the test program, no public clarification on the hybrid deployment rules, no official comment on which systems were being validated and which ones weren't ready. It wasn't just quiet, it was absent. And in a season where more than 50% of the car's total power is now hybrid-derived, you can't afford that kind of ambiguity, because every team is interpreting the rules differently, and whoever gets away with the boldest interpretation first often ends up setting the precedent. We've seen this before. 2019, Ferrari's fuel flow trick. 2020, Mercedes with DS. Both times, the FIA hesitated, and in both cases, teams gained huge early advantages before the rulebook finally caught up. Right now, Red Bull looks like a team that's not waiting for permission. They went fast. They ran clean. They didn't reveal anything controversial, but they also didn't look worried about crossing any invisible line. That's the real concern, because when the governing body stays silent, the power doesn't disappear, it just shifts. From the officials to the teams bold enough to act without oversight. And with four teams hiding problems, and only one team showing confident pace, that silence is starting to look like a risk the FIA doesn't know how to manage. Red Bull may have run fewer laps than Mercedes, but they left Barcelona with something far more valuable: narrative control. They ran a rookie, didn't chase headlines, and still set the fastest time. No obvious drama, no public failures, and no tech breakdowns that required explanation. In a pre-season environment designed for discretion, they look like the only team that didn't need to hide anything. Mercedes, by contrast, ran 56 laps with Antonelli. That's solid mileage. It shows reliability, structure, and discipline. But something felt missing. No push laps, no sector dominance, no sense of urgency or advantage. It wasn't a bad day, but it also wasn't a statement. Audi, in their first test as a full works team, ran 27 laps and then stopped. The decision to leave early felt controlled, but also uncertain. Was it pre-planned? Did something fail internally? Nobody's saying. And that ambiguity matters, especially for a team trying to establish credibility in their first true season. Haas ran quietly, 42 laps, no reliability concerns. But their program looked conservative. Limited setup variation. No deep energy deployment runs. And in this new era, where ERS mapping and cooling strategies define race pace, playing it safe can quickly turn into falling behind. Alpine had a rougher day. A suspected calibration fault led to a full on-track stoppage, the kind of public failure no team wants on day one. The car returned to the garage, but never reappeared. It's not a crisis yet, but when your rivals are logging data and you're resetting ECUs, you're not gaining ground, you're recovering it. And then, of course, are the teams we didn't see. No laps, no photos from pit lane, no mechanical data leaked, which means we're not even measuring them against Red Bull's 118. We're measuring them against 0. And in testing, 0 is a number that grows heavier with every hour that passes. Day one didn't answer anything. It barely even asked the right questions. But that's what makes it dangerous, because this wasn't just a test day. It was the first time the grid lined up, even if only halfway. And already, we can see who's prepared, and who's pretending to be. Red Bull didn't just run laps. They planted a flag. Not by talking, not by overexposing the car, but by being willing to show something when no one else was. Ferrari's silence, McLaren's absence, it might be nothing, or it might be the start of a very familiar pattern. The kind where hope gives way to excuses, and not ready turns into not competitive. The FIA's silence only fuels this, because when the governing body refuses to define limits, the fastest team ends up doing it for them. And that's exactly what happened on day one. There are still weeks left. Still time for systems to stabilize, for updates to arrive, for teams to recover. But this sport doesn't wait. And if Red Bull's lap was even half real, then the rest of the grid may already be trying to catch up to something they haven't even fully seen yet. So no, day one didn't reveal much, but what it tried to hide, that's what might define the season.